All right, class. Good morning. How was your weekend? How was your week last week? Okay naman po ba? Or do you all have your preliminary examinations with your other subjects?
Okay naman po, sir.
Okay. And okay, so nag-prelim na kayo sa iba yung subject. Nag-take na kayo ng preliminary exams?
Opo. Hindi ako.
Isa pa lang po.
Okay. Isa pa lang. Okay. So, all right. So, BL3. Sino BL3 niya? Si Sir Floor?
Pogi ako.
Bago po, sir. Si Sir Deo Dacles.
Okay. Okay. Sige. Okay, so, uh, let's try to discuss now yung chapter 5 kasi, di ba, we're done with chapters 1, 2, 4. So, yung chapter 5, maikli lang naman to, although the discussion may take 1 hour, but it's more on the control framework. So let's try to discuss what is a control framework. So control framework is this is something that uh, that sorry, let me just silent my phone. Okay. So control framework this is something that is more focused on the controls within the organization. So ito yung mga internal controls na ini-implement or in place within the organization. So paano daw ini-implement yung internal controls within an organization. So normally we have the 5 components or in order to for the internal control to take place. So, dito pumapasok si COSO. So, si COSO is just one of the control frameworks implemented all over the world. Actually, siya yung pinakasikat na control framework, si COSO. So, COSO means it's Committee of Sponsoring Organization. So internal control, it comprises the plan of organization and the coordinate methods and measures adopted within a business to safeguard its assets, check the accuracy and reliability of its accounting data, promote operational efficiency, and encourage adherence to prescribed managerial policies. So, why do we need plan pagdating sa internal control? Why do we need plan? Do you have any idea? If you would like to answer, you can write it through our chat box, or you can um, say it aloud here using your microphone. So, do you have any idea why do we need to plan out when establishing or implementing internal controls? Any guess? To serve as a guide. Thea Noreen says it will serve as a guide. Yes, probably it will serve as a guide because um, when we are working in a big organization or big firms, big companies, a lot of people are working there. Syempre, if we will not implement internal control measures, of course, kapag may opportunity to commit fraud, to commit violations, these people will commit the fraud, the collusion, connivance. Um, so, ganun yun. So, syempre, if we already have an internal control measure, internal control framework, or internal control policies, then um, we are securing all our assets, resources in our company. So, syempre, the, it will prevent losses of profits or losses of resources in the future kung meron tayong internal controls. And syempre, para magawa yung internal controls, we are being guided by the control frameworks na ginawa ng mga experts pagdating sa audit, pagdating sa internal control. So, doon nabuo si COSO. So, si COSO normally, uh, COSO means Committee of Sponsoring Organization. So pag sinabing Committee of Sponsoring Organization, it's a group of different institutes or different organization na nagsama-sama para i-create or i-formulate ano ba yung pinakamagandang framework pagdating sa internal control. So yeah, that's why we really need to plan. From the operation or the entity perspective on how to create a proper internal control within an organization. Why do we need to plan it as well? Because syempre iba-iba yung departments, iba-iba yung operating units. Dapat we need to coordinate. And kailangan mag-coordinate yung iba-ibang department. Siyempre, pag nag-implement ka ng internal control, while not considering other departments, magiging applicable lang siya sa isang department. And then to other departments or other teams, hindi na siya magiging applicable. So, kailangan yung internal control policies natin, kailangan siya, may consideration ng other departments, other methods, other measures. Ano ba yung pinaka-best na pwedeng i-apply within the company. And then also, Luella said, we need to plan in order to establish a basis on how the work of each department flows and to have a rules and regulations that the employees will follow, which is 100% correct. That's why we need to plan kasi it will serve as a guide, just like what Vea Noreen has said. And syempre, there must be a workflow or process flow on how the internal control will be implemented all over the organization. And syempre, kung meron tayong established internal control policies, doon naka-adhere yung mga employees. Ano yung dapat nilang sundin? Kapag, for example, yung sa procedures for claiming payroll, di ba? Claiming overtime pay. Syempre, hindi mo basta-basta ina-expect. Kung ikaw yung empleyado, nag-overtime ka, ina-expect mo na meron kang marireceive na overtime pay. Pero syempre, meron yung mga controls. Paano ka makaklaim ng overtime pay? Kailangan yung overtime mo is authorized muna. Syempre, hindi naman pwedeng overtime ka lang ng overtime kasi hindi naman pala authorized yung overtime mo on that day. So, syempre, first, it must be an authorized overtime. Next one, syempre, kapag authorized na yung overtime mo, you should file OT form. So, syempre, i-send mo yun or i-forward mo yun sa HR o kaya sa payroll team para makomputan nila kung magkano yung overtime pay mo. And that's the time you can claim your overtime pay na isasama doon sa payroll mo, sa net pay mo. So, hindi tayo basta-basta na, sige, mag-overtime ako. So, ina-expect ko na the next payroll, nandoon na yung overtime ko. Kung wala kang final, hindi authorized yung overtime mo, hindi ka makaka-claim ng overtime. So, yun yung isa sa mga internal control pagdating naman sa payroll. Siyempre, it will prevent losses from the company, di ba? Kung lahat na lang OT ng OT, walang control, bababa yung net income ng company. Kasi, syempre, mapupunta na lang sa overtime pay yung um, yung ibabayad sa kanila. And then, wala na rin control procedure kasi hindi siya properly approved, hindi siya properly authorized. So, ganun, isa yung example ng internal control procedure. Pero particularly lang doon sa payroll. Pero let's talk about internal control in an overall or overview perspective. So, internal control is being adapted within a business to safeguard its assets. So, just like what I've said, syempre kung OT ng OT, walang proper authorization, walang proper approval, edi yung cash ng company, labas lang ng labas, mapupunta lang sa empleyado. Kahit OT sila ng OT, maliban natin kung merong ginawa or wala naman palang ginawa. Nag-extend lang ng time sa opisina kasi umuulan, di ba? O kaya nag-extend lang ng time sa opisina kasi matraffic pa. Gusto nila umuwi na ng gabi. May ibang ganong employees na, extend muna ako, mag-OT ako kasi matraffic pa. Ayokong sumabay sa mga maraming tao pag rush hour. So, may ibang ganon. Siyempre, kung may control sa pag-approve ng OT, siyempre itatanong muna, ano ba yung gagawin mo? Is it really a need to take an overtime or to have an overtime for that report? Kailangan na ba yon? O siyempre, matatanong pa nung immediate supervisor nung employee kung kailangan ba talagang mag-overtime. Siyempre, i-justify niya kung kailangan talaga. If not, na-prevent yung further outflow ng resources, which is the cash, sa company. Kasi hindi siya mababayaran ng overtime fee. Check the accuracy and reliability of its accounting data, promote operational efficiency, and encourage adherence to prescribed managerial policies. So from the terminology of internal control, diyan pa lang nakikita na natin kung ano yung mga objectives na meron sa internal control. So we have 3 objectives: operational objective, reporting objective, and then compliance objective. So, yung una, yan, nakasulat. Promote operational efficiency. So, nakafocus yan for the operating objectives of the company. And then, accuracy and reliability of the accounting data is more on the reporting objectives of the internal control. And then, adherence to prescribed policies naman, ito naman yung mga compliance objectives. So, next slide. Internal control. Internal control is broadly defined as a process affected by the entity's board of directors. Bakit siya affected? Bakit siya affected by the board of directors? Because the internal audit team who implements the internal control is directly is being directed by the board of directors, particularly what committee of the board of directors? The internal audit committee or the audit committee. So, nag-isang process yung internal control because we are implementing these safeguarding measures or internal control measures for the normal operating procedures that we have in an organization. So, aware na tayo kung ano yung mga operational policies, 'di ba? May mga operating policies within an organization. For example, sa operations or sa accounting. Let's say, for example, sa accounting muna tayo. Sa accounting, how do we record transactions? How do we record transactions? Do you have any idea how do we record transactions? Doon muna tayo sa accounting department na lang muna. So, pare-pareho tayo ng iniisip. So, how do we record transactions pagdating sa accounting? Any idea? Journalizing is the process of recording transactions. But how do we record? I mean, what's the basis? What's the basis? My receipt or document po dapat by Christine? Yes, that's correct. Documents. Journal entries. So, kapag nag-record tayo ng transaction, there must be a source document, di ba? We cannot record a transaction if there are no source documents. For example, may na-receive tayong supplier's invoice. Ang nakasulat doon sa supplier's invoice, office supplies. Maraming klase ng office supplies nakalista. Tapos ang amount, 10,000 pesos. Diba? Tapos doon sa supplier's invoice, may nakita tayo, terms of payment. Diba? 5, 10, 2 over 20, and then N over 30. Diba? So, alam nyo naman na yun, di ba? Pag 5 over 10, ibig sabihin 5% discount if payment is made within 10 days. 2 over 20, 2% discount is if payment is made within 20 days. And then N over 30, no discount if payment is made 30 days and beyond. Di ba? So, ganun yan. So, from the source document na yun, supplier's invoice, syempre nakita natin may terms. So, ibig sabihin, hindi pala agad-agad babayaran. So, how do we record those, the transaction for that source document? So, we have to debit what? Office supplies, di ba? Amounting to 10,000 pesos. And then we credit accounts payable amounting to 10,000 pesos. Nakukuha po ba? Nagigets po ba? Nagigets
Yes
po ba?
po, sir.
Yes, nagigets natin from the accounting point of view. Pero, syempre, ini-integrate na natin yung operational audit. Syempre, pag may na-receive tayong source document na yun, hindi natin siya basta-basta i-record. Bakit kaya natin siya hindi basta-basta i-record? Kasi marami pang ayun yung normal procedure natin. Pero meron tayong dapat i-implement or sundin na internal control procedure or internal control policy. Bago na, pag na-receive natin yung supplier's invoice or supplier's invoice, may hahanapin pa tayong ibang document. Siyempre, isipin natin bilang nasa accounting department, is this document really approved? Approved ba to? Bakit dumating na sa atin? Ganon. So, iisipin natin yun. So, let me just read the explanation or opinions of your other classmates. So, Christine, titingin kung may signatures or tama na yung nakalagay na information. So that's correct. So how do we, what document do we need to look at kapag may na-receive tayong supplier's invoice? Siyempre isipin natin, was it approved? Approved ba tong supplier's invoice na to na na-receive namin from accounting department? If yes, we are looking for a purchase order, diba? We're looking for a purchase order. Sabihin natin, nasaan yung purchase order? Siyempre, pagtingin nyo doon sa supplier's invoice, naka-attach dapat sa likod ng supplier's invoice yung purchase order. So, makikita nyo doon yung listahan ng mga in-order dapat mag-match yung listahan ng ordered supplies doon sa nakalista sa supplier's invoice. 'Di ba? Kung meron man na hindi kung meron man kasama doon sa supplier's invoice na wala sa lista na nasa purchase order, then yung nakalagay doon sa supplier's invoice, hindi yun authorized. Nakukuha po ba? So dapat yung purchase order magmamatch siya with the supplier's invoice. So doon meron tayong ini-implement na internal control. May control tayong ini-implement. And then another one, syempre may nakita na tayong purchase order. May nakita na tayong purchase order. I-check natin kung approve ba yung purchase order na yon. Sino yung nag-request na department? For example, ang nag-request na department yung sa production department. Umorder sila ng office supplies and factory supplies. But was it approved? May purchase order na nga. Lumalabas parang approved siya. Pero was it really approved? May nag-approve ba na supervisor, production supervisor, or production manager? So, i-check natin yung purchase order kung meron bang naka-attach na requisition form. So, yung requisition form, syempre dapat approve yun ng purchase manager saka ng production manager na nagre-request for the office supplies or factory supplies. So, yun yung mga example ng internal control measures, internal control policies na dapat ini-implement natin within the company, within the entity, or within the organization. Kasi kapag may mga internal control measures tayo, mape-prevent yung mga unauthorized purchases. So, di ba, if you still remember, na kwento ko sa inyo last time yung about sa Nestle Corporation. Di ba? May mga excessive purchases ng asukal. Napansin ng internal audit team ng Nestle na medyo malaki yung purchases sa asukal. So doon nila nalaman na later on na found out na si purchasing manager bumibili pala siya ng sobra-sobrang asukal kasi inuuwi niya yung iba, tinitinda niya, nilalagay niya doon sa kanyang bigasan, asukalan, saka may mantikaan. So, ganun. So, nilalagay niya doon para meron siyang maibebenta personally sa sarili niyang business. So, kung walang proper procedures, like kailangan muna mag-secure ng requisition form bago magkaroon at ma-approve ng purchasing manager pati nung immediate manager. And then, kailangan yung requisition form supported by purchase order na approved din ng purchasing manager. And then yung purchase order naman na yun, match doon sa supplier's invoice. Pag merong mismatch, hindi siya match lahat ng documents na yon, magda-doubt tayo. Is it really authorized? Is it really approved yung ganitong purchase na to? Kasi parang hindi pantay, hindi equal yung nakalista sa purchase order doon sa supplier's invoice. So yun yung example ng internal control measures. IC is broadly defined as a process effected by the entity's board of directors, management, and other personnel designed to provide reasonable assurance regarding the achievement of objectives. Bakit siya reasonable assurance lang? Kasi walang absolute assurance. Kahit may internal control, meron pa rin talagang risks na nag-i-exist sa loob ng company. Hindi talaga may iwasan yung mga risk na yun due to human error, kaya nagkakaroon ng errors talaga kahit perfect na yung internal control procedures. And then may mga tinatawag tayong inherent risk. Yung risk na nag-i-exist na doon sa company even before, bago pa lang in-establish yung company, may mga risk na nag-i-exist na. So, kaya hindi tayo makakapagbigay ng absolute assurance, yung mga auditor, regarding the achievement of objectives. Only reasonable assurance lang yung pwede nating ibigay. So, ano na ba yung mga objectives na yon? Based on COSO framework, ito yung mga tatlong objectives. Effectiveness and efficiency of operations. Yun yung operating objectives. And then reliability of financial reporting. Ito yung financial reporting objectives. And then compliance with applicable laws and regulations. Ito naman yung compliance objectives. The COSO framework. So COSO means Committee of Sponsoring Organizations of the Treadway Commission. So kaya siya naging COSO kasi Committee of Sponsoring Organization. So it was formed by year 1985. Kaya siya sponsoring organization kasi iba-iba yung mga organizations na sumali sa committee na yan para mag-formulate ng isang internal control framework. So, sino-sino naman yung mga organization na yon na sumama sa COSO? So, kasama na dyan si Institute of Internal Auditors. So, yun yung una. Ikalawa, American Institute of Certified Public Accountants. Pangatlo, American Accounting Association. Hello, can you still hear me?
Yes, sir.
po.
Alright,
Yes,
sige, sige.
sir.
Thank you. Okay. I am just... can you still see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Opo.
Thank you.
Opo.
Thank you. Okay. So, ito yung mga institute or organizations na sumama doon sa COSO. So, we have Institute of Internal Auditors. Di ba napag-usapan na natin si Institute of Internal Auditors noon kasi ito yung introduction natin sa operations audit. And then, we have American Institute of Certified Public Accountants kasi yung COSO was formulated in United States. So, AICPA, syempre napag-aralan nyo na to sa Accounting 101 nyo. And then, American Accounting Association. And then, Institute of Management Accountants, Financial Executives Institute, and then the New York Stocks Exchange. So, these are the organizations that formulate the COSO Internal Control framework in year 1985. In year 1992, the first internal control integrated framework was created. Gumawa sila ng internal control framework in the form of a cube or Rubik's cube. Parang ganon yung pagkaka-explain nila about the internal control framework. So mamaya i-discuss natin about doon sa paradigm cube ng internal control framework. In year 2013, the internal control integrated framework was revised para maka-adapt with the changes and changing needs ng mga users of the information, not only the financial information, but other information as well. And then currently, on the latest integrated framework ng COSO, yung internal control, in-integrate na din yung enterprise resource management. Hindi lang siya more on internal control, kundi may ERM na rin siya. So, yun lang. But we are focusing on internal control lang muna. Pag-aralan na lang natin in the future yung may ERM integration about sa internal control framework. So, here is the overview of the internal control framework. So ito yung itsura ng cube. Can you still see my screen, class?
Yes, sir.
All right. So, yung cube daw is being represented by three um, sides. We have the objective sides, component sides, and then the level side. So, yung sa taas, the top side are the objectives. So, we have the operations, reporting, and then compliance. Operations objectives, syempre, these are the objectives related to operations. And then reporting objective, these are the objectives pertaining to financial reporting. So accuracy, adherence, or compliance with the existing uh, reporting frameworks. And then last one is the compliance objectives or adherence to existing rules and regulations. Then we have also the components, five components of internal control. Mapag-aaralan nyo to in the future pa pagdating nyo sa auditing theory saka sa applied auditing. But we'll tackle it as well here para mas malaman natin. Mayroon tayong introduction, syempre para kapag may auditing theory na kayo, alam na alam nyo na yung internal control. And then yung levels, ito naman yung mga levels within the organization kung saan ini-implement yung internal control. So, hindi lang siya pang isahan, pwede siya pang overall yung application ng internal control. So, from the simplest unit, which is the function, up to the entity as a whole, ina-apply yung internal control. So for the objectives, so we have the three objectives, just like what I have said. Okay. Operating objectives, it focuses on the performance or profitability goals. Siyempre, kapag it focuses on the performance or profitability goals. So, syempre, kung efficient and effective yung operations, less cost yung mai-incur ng company, and then higher revenue kasi mas productive yung operations, mas maraming naibibenta, mas maraming services ang magagawa. So, mas mataas yung profitability rate no company. So, doon naka-focus yung objectives ng first objectives no internal control framework based on the operating objectives. The second objective is the financial reporting objective, which focuses on the accuracy of the financial statement. Siyempre, yung financial statements, it reflects the performance and the position of the company. So, performance, it's more on the profit, di ba? Kung nag-i-income ba si company or hindi ba nag-i-income. So, syempre, kung accurate yung financial statements, lalabas yung totoong performance ng company. Syempre, yung iba, hindi naman, I mean, yung iba is like yung ibang company, hindi sila properly nagre-report ng totoong financial statements nila. Why? Bakit hindi nila nire-report ng tama? Do you have any idea bakit kaya hindi nagre-report ng tama yung ibang management pala? I mean, ibang management hindi nagre-report ng tama na financial statements. You can post your comments through our chat box or you can say it loud here. Tax evasion, yes, that's true. For tax evasion purposes, ginagawa yun ng ibang companies. Any other? Any other? Sige, let me just discuss first the tax evasion. Bakit ginagawa yan ng ibang company. So, itong tax evasion, this is, I can consider this as a management fraud. So, bakit siya management fraud? Yung particular nagko-commit dito is yung management. Kasi gusto nila mapababa yung tax na babayaran nila. So, ganun yung sa tax evasion. So, it's a management fraud kasi gusto ng management mapababa yung tax na babayaran nila. That's why they commit or they alter the financial statements, bababaan yung revenue, tataasan yung expense para mas maliit yung tax na babayaran. Ikalawa, for loan purposes. Yes, that's true. There are other companies who are suffering from excessive loss or cash deficiency, and ang option nila para ma-sustain ulit yung company is to ask for loan from different financial institutions like banks and lending companies. And one of the requirement of those banks ay, ay isang financial statement kasi i-assess ng banks yung financial standing ng company. Kung maganda yung financial standing ng company, they will be approved ng loans, 'di ba? Business loans. Kung hindi maganda yung financial standing ng company, they will not be approved of their requested loan, 'di ba? So ang gagawin ng management ng company, papagandahin yung financial statements kung hindi maganda. So that is also considered a management fraud. So ginagawa yan ng ibang company to get promoted. Yes, possible to get promoted. Kasi there are certain cases, like for example, sa mga small businesses. Sa small businesses, ito yung mga, we can consider small and medium enterprises where, for example, they also have accountants, pero yung accountant na yun, nire-report niya yung tama sa financial statement. But there is an operations manager. An operations manager or general manager. Diba? Yung general manager, he wants to review the financial statement. Kapag palugi, magre-recommend siya dun sa accountant. Sabihin niya, oy, i-defer mo muna to. Wag mo muna to gawing expense. Kasi parang lugi tayo. Kung i-defer mo tong expense na to, at least meron tayong income. So, syempre, kung i-dress, 'di ba? I-window dress, papagandahin yung financial statement. Sasabihin nung mga investors o kaya nung top management, ay magaling pala to si general manager. So we can promote him or her to become the president of our business, of our organization. So tama po 'yun. So one example, one reason is for promotion, 'di ba? Ikalawa, loan purposes. Ikatlo, tax evasion. And then, by Denise, sabi ni Denise, attract more investors, which is correct. Other companies are doing it to attract more investors, not only in small companies. This is also applicable or existing to big companies. Pinapaganda nila yung financial statements para yung ibang investors mahikayat. Okay, mag-invest kami dito kasi maganda yung uh, financial statements. Yung investors naman, hindi naman nila ini-scrutinize yung financial statements. Kung may accounting graduate doon or business graduate doon sa mga investors, ang titignan lang nila, kukunin lang nila yung mga amounts and then they will perform financial ratios. Magko-compute lang sila. Kapag sa tingin nila okay yung financial ratios na na-compute nila, they will invest to that company. Pero they did not dig deeper na kung saan makikita nila yung mga fraud, errors, mistakes na meron doon sa company. So that is those are one of the reasons why management is committing fraudulent activities in terms of financial reporting. So that's why we need internal control pagdating sa financial reporting objective ng company to prepare accurate financial reports and in adherence or in accordance with the existing uh, reporting frameworks, di ba? Kung maaalala nyo, ano-ano ba yung mga reporting frameworks na alam natin, di ba? Alam nyo na, I mean, naaalala nyo pa po ba kung ano ba yung mga reporting frameworks na meron tayo? Naalala pa po ba? So let me test uh, uh, your knowledge. Diba? Knowledge retention. Ano na yung mga reporting frameworks na meron tayo? Any idea about the reporting frameworks? O sige, sasabihin ko na yung isang reporting framework. So we have the full PFRS. Yes, GAAP. Gabriel said GAAP. Generally accepted accounting principles. Yes, that's true. Particularly what? The full PFRS. So here in the Philippines, we have the Philippine Financial Reporting Standards. IFRS, the International Financial Reporting Standards, where the PFRS came from, diba? PAS, Philippine Accounting Standards. Yes. So actually, to give you an overview, PAS saka PFRS, iisa lang yan. Kuha po ba? Kasi noon, we have US GAAP. Itong US GAAP na to, nung tumagal, sinasabi ng ibang accounting associations, parang hindi na nakakapag-produce ng accurate financial information ang US GAAP kapag sinunod natin yung US GAAP. So ngayon, yung ibang accounting association, they created a separate accounting standards different from the US GAAP na tinawag nilang International Accounting Standards. Kaya nagkaroon tayo ng IAS. So itong IAS na to, ginaya naman ng Philippines kasi member tayo ng IAS. Yung mga users ng IAS. So inadapt natin siya locally kaya nagkaroon tayo ng PAS. Diba? Ngayon, syempre, maraming gumagamit ng IAS standards. So itong mga IAS standard users, napansin ng US na parang ay mas marami na yung gumagamit ng IAS standard. So ibig sabihin parang mas tama yung reporting under IAS. So si US GAAP, yung board ng US GAAP, si FASB, nakipag-coordinate siya with standard setters ni IAS, which is IASB. Nagkaroon sila ng convergence. Nagsama sila. Sabi nila, in the future, maybe we can create standards na pareho natin gagamitin. Diba? So, ito na yung ginawa nila, yung IFRS. Kaya yung IFRS, applicable na siya both in US saka ng mga IAS users. Kaya kung mapapansin nyo, huwag kayo malilito bakit may IAS, bakit may IFRS? Kasi yung IAS dati, hiwalay siya sa US GAAP. But the IFRS is the convergence of US GAAP and IAS. Kaya lahat ng IAS natin, in the future, mawawala yan. Mapapalitan yan lahat ng IFRS. So kung mapapansin nyo, lahat ng bagong standards, puro IFRS. Kasi convergence yan ng US GAAP saka ng IAS. So ano pa yung ibang reporting framework na alam natin? So we have full IFRS, di ba? Or full PFRS. That is applicable sa large corporation or listed corporation. How about sa mga small and medium enterprises? Ano yung reporting framework natin sa small and medium enterprises? Kailangan alam niyo yan. Kasi syempre, pinag-aaralan natin yung objectives ng internal control. O tapos na tayo sa operating objectives. Now, we're on the financial reporting objective. So, alam nyo yung full IFRS, full PFRS. Ano naman yung reporting framework para sa small and medium enterprises? AICPA is the organization. Di ba sa Philippines, we have PICPA, PICPA. So, organization. Ito, hindi sila reporting framework. FRF, what is FRF? I'm not financial reporting framework. Financial reporting framework is general. It's very broad. IFRS for SMEs. That is correct. So IFRS for SME is the reporting framework applicable sa small and medium enterprises. So this is correct. Jessica has said through our chat box. So IFRS for SMEs. Napag-aralan niyo na po ba yung IFRS for SMEs or PFRS for SMEs? Napag-aralan niyo na po ba?
Di pa po.
Hindi pa. But do you have your financial accounting or intermediate accounting volume 3?
Ako po, sir, chapter
Do
1.
you have your chapter 1? Chapter 1 pa lang. Sino teacher niyo doon? Just curious.
Sir Jeremy po.
Sir Jeremy po.
Si Sir Jeremy. Magaling naman pala si Sir Jeremy. So, John Louis said financial reporting framework. So, financial reporting framework, yung example nun is IFRS and then IFRS for SME. So, na-identify na natin yung dalawang reporting framework. Meron pa tayong isang reporting framework para sa micro entities or small entities. Ano yung reporting framework para sa micro entities saka sa small entities? So pag-aralan natin para at least alam nyo pag tinanong na pala kayo ni Sir Jeremy, sabihin ni Sir Jeremy, we have this reporting frameworks. And sabihin niya, ay alam na namin to sir, no? Napag-aralan na namin to in advance. So yung una, the full PFRS. Alam na namin yan sir, napag-aralan na namin yan, magaling kami dyan. Ikalawa, PFRS for SME. So syempre sir, napag-aralan na namin yan, na-discuss na nga namin yan. And then yung pangatlo, ano yung pangatlo? Yung pangatlo is the PFRS for small entities or micro entities. So these are the financial reporting frameworks or FRF na sinasabi ninyo. So una, full PFRS. Ikalawa, PFRS for SMEs. Ikatlo, PFRS for small entities or micro entities. So ito, lahat itong tatlo na to, pare-pareho lang sila. Ang pinagkaiba lang nila, si full PFRS, mas stricto siya. Mas stricto yung kanyang mga standards. Si PFRS for SMEs, mas relax yung ano niya compared kay full PFRS. And then si PFRS for small entities, mas relax compared kay small SME. So yun yung mga financial reporting framework na meron tayo. And then compliance objectives. So, bakit meron tayong compliance objectives? Because kailangan the companies adhering to relevant regulations, legislation, board policies, and covenants. So, relevant regulation, syempre, what are the existing rules and regulations ng mga government authorities? Let's say, for example, uh, balik tayo sa accounting. Ano-ano yung mga government authorities na normally alam natin, kailangan compliant tayo? Ano yung mga government authorities na dapat compliant tayo bilang accounting? BIR, diba?
BIR,
SEC.
SEC.
So,
OWA.
diba? SEC, BIR, yes. So, tama po yun. Sa BIR, kailangan compliant tayo in terms of tax. Kailangan tama yung computation ng tax. Kapag mali yung computation ng tax, may tax deficiency. So, hindi mo lang babayaran yung tax deficiency, magbabayad ka rin ng penalty, magbabayad ka rin ng interest, magbabayad ka rin ng surcharges. So, kapag hindi mo nabayaran yung tamang tax. Kay SEC naman, kailangan mag-submit tayo ng mga reportorial requirements. Annual audited financial statements, general form of financial statements, special form of financial statements. So ito yung mga example ng reports na sinasubmit natin kay SEC. And then meron pang sinasubmit din every year, yung general information sheet. Ito yung nakalagay dito yung details ng corporation, sino-sino yung mga current officers, current board of directors, magkano yung existing capital, magkano yung paid up, magkano yung subscribe, nandoon yung sa general information sheet. Kapag hindi mo na ibigay ito kay SEC, pati yung annual audited financial statements, may penalty ka in the future. Pinakamababa, 10,000. So, hindi yan naniningil basta-basta sa SEC. So, sisingilin ka niya kapag malaki na yung utang mo. So, ganun yun. So, kailangan compliant tayo with existing rules and regulation. Legislation naman. Ano kaya mga legislation? Pag sinabing legislation, laws. Ano yung mga laws na kailangan compliant tayo? Kasi kanina, relevant regulation. So, alam natin yun sa government authorities like BIR, SEC. And then legislation, laws. Ano yung mga examples no? Train law, which is also part of BIR. Tama po. Although it's part of legislation and then part of the regulations. So, may tax na ba kayo or wala pa?
Wala pa po.
Wala pa. Okay. So, pag fourth year nyo, may tax na kayo and excited na siguro kayo pag-aralan yung tax. No? So, pag-aralan nyo rin yan, yung train law. So, adherence in compliance with the existing regulations by the BIR. So, dahil merong train law, kailangan din natin i-apply. Ano pa yung mga laws na kailangan tayo? In compliance. Let's say, for example, kung factory kayo, may lumalabas na usok sa factory building nyo, kailangan compliant kayo with the Clean Air Act, di ba? With the Clean Air Law. Kasi syempre, kung maitim yung nilalabas yung usok, ay lagot kayo kay DNR. Ano pa? The Consumer Act of the Philippines. Yes, tama po yan. Okay? Let me just check si nagsabi. By Gabriel. So, tama po yan. Consumer Act of the Philippines. Kailangan compliant tayo doon kung ano yung nasa provision ng Consumer Act of the Philippines. Pag sinabing meron siyang binili, tapos later on nakita niya na defective, di ba? Pag nakita niya defective, isasaoli niya sa inyo. Tapos sasabihin niyo, ay ano po kami, no return, no exchange policies. Ano yan? Lagot kayo sa DTI, lagot kayo sa Consumer Act of the Philippines. Na violate niyo yung Consumer Act of the Philippines law. Kasi bawal ang hindi tanggapin kapag sinoli ng customer yung defective products na nabili niya. Kailangan mong palitan, di ba? And then by Christine, sabi ni Christine, labor law, which is correct. Kailangan in compliance tayo with the labor law. Ang bayad sa sweldo dapat on time. Kailan ba nagbabayad? 15 saka 30, di ba? Kada 15, kada 30 nagbabayad ng pasweldo ang mga kumpanya. Kapag lumagpas ng 15 saka lumagpas ng 30 yung bayad sa sweldo, labor case na agad yon. 13th month pay. Ang 13th month pay, mandatory yon, binibigay ng company on or before December 24. Kapag hindi ka nakabigay on or before December 24, kung kayo yung company, labor case yon. At lagot yung company na yan kasi wala kayong may explain. Kailangan nyo ibigay, diba? Ano pa po ba? Licensing and permits. Yes, that's true. As John Luis said, licensing and permits. Kasi operating without any valid business permits and licenses renders your company illegally operating for that particular year. So kailangan paparenew kayo ng business permits, business license. So that is also in accordance with the local government code. Diba? We have the national laws, we have the local laws, diba? So yun yung mga example no, in compliance with the existing laws. How about the board policies? What are the board policies? Na mga example lang. Example ng board policies na dapat compliance tayo. May idea ba kayo about sa board policies? Bigyan ko na lang kayo ng idea about sa board policies. Yung mga board of directors kasi na to, minsan nanggagaling din sa kanila yung mga policies na dati wala sa company, tapos meron nagkaroon ng special case na ginawa nila na action. For example, nag-dispose ng asset, di ba? May approval nga na dinispose yung asset, sabi nung sabihin natin ng supervisor sa operations, so sige, hindi na to nagpe-perform yung asset na to, i-dispose na natin. Diba? So tinapon lang, hindi nila binenta. And then nalaman ng board of directors na ay hindi pa pwede yung ganyan. Kailangan kahit papano may proper disposal ng mga assets. So hindi lang siya basta-basta na i-dispose natin, diba? Kanino ibigay, basta wala ng value. Baka pwede nating i-appraise onte, tapos kung may possible market value pa ba siya, baka pwedeng ibenta. So ganun na yung naging additional policy. So kapag nag-dispose, i-check kung meron pa bang market value. Tapos kung may market value, ibenta. Diba? Bilhin nung gusto bumili. So that's the policy coming from the board of directors. Any question regarding the objectives, the 3 objectives that we discussed? Any questions? Do you have any questions? Suggestions? None so far, I think so. So let's try to go with the next slide, the components of the internal control framework. Can you still hear me? Can you still hear me, class?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Okay,
Yes, sir.
thank you. Salamat. So these are the components of the internal control framework, sabi ni COSO. So ito na yung pinaka-front na side ng cube. So we have the 5 components of the control framework. The first one is the control environment. Second one is the risk assessment. Third one is the control activities. Fourth, information and communication. Fifth, monitoring activities. So let's discuss first the control environment. So ano ba yung meron sa control environment? Pag sinabing control environment, this is the workplace environment. Dito ito yung setup ng organization. Dito nag-ooperate lahat ng department. So yun yung control environment. Nakukuha po ba? So this also includes the tone at the top and the degrees to which there is a congruence between management's talk and its walk. In other words, the control environment is where the people and the managers practice what are the policies is instructing them to do so. So, yung control environment, yun yung workplace. Nandoon yung dapat, doon sila gumagawa, doon nila dapat i-apply yung operating policies. At the same time, doon din nila i-apply dapat yung internal control policies. So, yun yung control environment. So, yung control environment, meron 5 policies here. Parang first one, commitment to integrity and ethical values. Commitment to integrity and ethical values. Dahil under the control environment, yung mga tao doon, syempre, it's their workplace. Kailangan yung ethical values must be implemented, di ba? We are working harmoniously. Hindi naman pwedeng walang code of ethics within the company, di ba? May proper dress code. Like for example, sa RTU, di ba? Sa RTU, may proper dress code, di ba? Assuming walang pandemic, pumapasok tayong lahat. Pwede bang pumasok doon na yung skirt is 5 inch above the knee? Can you still hear me, class?
Yes, sir.
Yes po.
Okay. So, just like for example, sa RTU, di ba? Hindi naman inaalaw ng guards yung students, even the professors, na pumasok sa school na yung, let's say for example, yung skirt is 5 inch above the knee. Unti na lang, makikita na yung underwear. Yung boys, hindi naman pwedeng pumasok ng nakasando, nakaslippers. Hindi naman pwedeng pumasok ng nakasombrelo, di ba? Laging sinecheck, sinisita ng guard, di ba? Minsan pa nga, pag pumapasok tayo dun sa gate, yung guard, ini-inspect pa yung bag natin kung merong dala na kung ano-ano. Ang ginagawa, tinutusok lang ng stick yung bag. Hindi naman tinitignan. So, we have codes to follow in a control environment or working environment natin. So, syempre, hindi niya pa yun naisip dahil you're all still students, but gusto namin, syempre, na maintindihan niyo na siya hanggang ngayon pa lang. Dahil yung mga nakakasalumuhan nyo is nag-work na. Like, for example, yung guards, they are working as a guard to earn. Yung mga professors yun doon, they are working, teaching you kasi gusto nila, meron silang kinikita, di ba? And they follow code of professional ethics doon sa workplace nila. And they are committed to their integrity. Second one, board of directors exercises oversight responsibility. Of course, in the control environment, kung sino yung mga nasa top management, top executives, particularly the board of directors, they oversee the workplace. Tinitignan nila kung ano pa bang merong kulang, ano yung mali, kung tama na ba lahat. So, yun yung meron sa control environment. Third one, establish structure, authority, and responsibility. We establish structure para merong proper and formal organizational structure. Siyempre, kapag may proper and formal organizational structure, merong merong levels of authority, 'di ba? Siyempre, itong particular level lang sa low management ito lang yung kaya nilang, ito lang yung level ng authority na pwede nilang gamitin. And then yung middle management, ito naman yung authority na pwede lang nilang gamitin. And then yung top management, ito yung authority na para sa kanila. So kapag meron tayong proper structure ng organizational structure, madedefine natin kung ano ba yung mga levels of authority, ano ba yung mga authority limits na pwede nating ibigay sa bawat organization. And then responsibility, of course, syempre, kung meron silang authority, there must be a corresponding responsibility. Diba? Sabi pa nga dun sa ano bang palabas to? Spider-Man, with great power comes with a great responsibility. Siyempre, habang tumataas ka sa isang company, tumataas din yung iyong level of authority. Pero habang tumataas yung level of authority mo, tumataas din yung level ng iyong responsibility. And then fourth one, commitment to competence. Of course, we are in the control environment or working environment. Siyempre, lahat ng tao doon ini-expect to be competent. Kasi kung competent tayo, natamaan agad natin yung operating objectives ng company. Diba? Yung operating objectives under the internal control framework. Siyempre, we need mas gusto natin mag-work or makatrabaho yung mga competent na tao. 'Di ba? Ayaw natin ng mga tamad lang, ayaw gumawa. Gusto natin competent, masipag. Parang katulad lang yan sa groupings natin, 'di ba? Pag classroom groupings, syempre gusto natin makatrabaho or makasama sa projects or assignments. Gusto natin mga classmates natin competent, 'di ba? Ayaw natin ng naghihintay lang na matapos yung project. Gusto natin lahat competent, sharing ideas. So, ganun yun. So, pagiging competent ng mga employees within the company, na natatarget na natin yung operating objectives ng company. Kasi kapag competent, productive, efficient, effective yung operations. So kapag efficient and effective, mataas yung profit, mababa yung cost, diba? Mataas yung revenue. And then last one, enforce accountability. Siyempre sa control environment, meron tayong structure and bawat structure ng organization may kanya-kanyang authority, delegated authority, may kanya-kanyang responsibility. Dahil may mga responsibility, may mga binibigay sa kanila na mga resources, naka-assign sa kanilang resources. Siyempre, for example, kung ikaw yung operations manager, you are the one responsible for the operations and production department. Dahil nasa iyo yung authority for the operation and production department, responsible ka at accountability mo yung mga resources within the operations and production department. Kapag may walang makina doon, machine, responsibility mo yan kasi ikaw yung manager for operations. Ganun lang yun. Kung ikaw naman yung manager for marketing, syempre, accountability mo yung mga tao mo. Lahat ng laptops na gamit nila, lahat ng mga cash advances nila or expenditures nila pag lumalabas sila, maghahanap ng mga potential customers, accountability mo pa rin yun. Diba? Kasi ikaw yung merong greater responsibility and then greater authority. So that is within the control environment. So that's the first component. Siyempre, kailangan nating pag-aralan kung ano yung nasa working environment ng isang organization para mas maintindihan natin maigi ano yung mga dapat internal control measures, internal control policies, di ba? Kasi kung titignan natin yung control environment, nakita natin ay para masyadong magulo. Kailangan merong kaayusan. O ano yung mga internal control measures na dapat nating isipin, di ba? Ganun po yun. For let's say for example, nakita natin yung itsura ng business, yung setup ng workplace ng isang business or isang company, walang maayos na kwarto ang bawat department. Yung sales katabi ng accounting, 'di ba? Yung sales team maingay. Syempre, nakikipag-usap sila over the phone, naghahanap ng bagong client, and then katabi nila yung accounting team. Yung accounting team, saka finance team, matahimik lang naman. Syempre, naiinis yung accounting team. Bakit ang ingay-ingay, di ba? Ganun, hindi sila makafocus sa work. Syempre, magrereklamo rin yung sales team. Paano kami, makaka-generate ng income kung papatahimikin nyo kami, di ba? So, kung makikita natin yung setup ng working environment, kung tayong internal auditor, malalaman na natin kung ano yung mga dapat control measures. Dapat yung sales department or sales team, hiwalay ang kwarto doon sa accounting and finance department. Kasi magka-clash tong dalawa na to, di ba? O itabi na lang natin yung sales team or sales department sa marketing team or marketing department. Diba? Ang production department, pwede rin nating itabi malapit dun sa sales team and sales department. Kasi yung kapag nagkaroon ng visitation yung mga potential customers, pwedeng mapakita or mag-tour around sa plant or sa operations. So, ganun yun. So, bilang isang internal auditor, kailangan din natin i-consider yung control environment. So, second one, risk assessment. So, di ba napag-aralan na natin tong risk assessment before? Pero dahil pinag-aralan natin yung yung COSO framework for internal control, pag-aaralan ulit natin yung risk assessment. So, these are the policies we need to consider pagdating sa risk assessment. Una, we need to set suitable objectives. Ano ba yung mga suitable objectives na kailangan nating implement para i-check yung risk assessment, yung risk within the company. Kasi we need to specify those objectives. Ano yung objective kaya? Bakit? Why do we need to conduct audit? Ano yung objective natin? Ganun. So, iisipin natin yun. What are those objectives? Bakit kailangan natin i-conduct itong internal audit? Bakit kailangan nating mag-implement ng internal control procedures? Kasi nakikita natin yung ibang risk. For example, ano yung mga example na maganda sa petty cash, di ba? Sa petty cash, paano ba nag-disburse sa petty cash, di ba? May isang petty cashier, di ba? Or petty cash custodian. Siya yung may hawak nung petty cash. So, yung petty cash na yon, yung petty cash na yon is, hello, can you still hear me, class? Okay, so thank you.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Thank you. So, just confirming. Okay. So, sa petty cash na yon, paano ba nagdi-disburse? Siyempre, kailangan alamin natin ano ba yung purpose ng petty cash. Diba? From the word petty, ibig sabihin small. So, ginagamit lang ang petty cash for relatively small items. Diba? Like, bayad sa jeep, bayad sa tricycle, papapuntahin mo yung messenger nyo, mangongolekta, syempre magbabayad pa yun ng jeep, magbabayad ng pamasahe sa tricycle, di ba? Kung wala tayong petty cash, alangan naman na ang ibabayad ng messenger nyo sa jeep ay cheque, di ba? Iaabot niya sa jeepney driver, ito po bayad ko 11 pesos, tapos pag abot na sa driver, cheque, di ba? So, hindi naman pwedeng ganoon. Kasi hindi naman applicable, hindi naman practical na mag-issue ng cheque palagi. Kailangan mag-issue ka ng cheque sa malalaking item kasi may cost din yung cheque. Magkano yung cost ng isang piraso ng cheque? Kung gagamitin mo yun sa lahat ng bagay, Ang gastos pala, maglalabas ka lang ng pera, may gastos pa. Kaysa kapag petty cash, may available ng pera, acceptable pa yun ng iba. Siyempre, hindi naman lahat may bank account, di ba? Para i-deposit yung cheque. Gusto nila is cash for small items. Siyempre, kapag sa petty cash, before i-release yung fund galing sa petty cash, kailangan may proper approval, di ba? May proper approval muna. Kanina ba manggagaling yung approval, di ba? Kung sino yung nag-request nung fund. Sino ba nagpadala sa messenger? Halimbawa, pinapapunta yung messenger mangongolekta. So, syempre, ang nag-request ng fund is from credit and collection. So, magre-request sila, may pirma, proper approval galing sa credit and collection team na si messenger pupunta sa ganitong area para mangolekta ng cheque o kaya ng bayad sa services or sa goods. So from that particular scenario, ma-assess na natin ano ba yung risk related doon. Ano yung risk pertaining sa petty cash, 'di ba? So pwede magkaroon ng falsification ng documents, 'di ba? Hindi naman lahat ng document na pinapresent sa inyo is totoo. Meron doon mga falsified documents na hindi totoo na pwedeng gamitin para makapaglabas ng pera. So we have to identify ano yung risk related doon. And then from those risks, we have to set specified or particular objectives. Diba? So, dun sa PowerPoint natin, suitable objectives. So, the same lang. Ikalawa, we have to identify and analyze risks. So, ayun yan. Diba? Na-identify natin. Ano ba yung risk na related doon sa petty cash? Para kayong example ng risk doon, di ba? So, kailangan natin identify. And then, assess risk of fraud. Di ba? I-assess natin, kailangan ba, possible ba na yung documents na nandoon sa petty cash hindi totoo lahat. Di ba? Meron nga akong isang na-witness na scenario. Kasi sa isang company na client ko na company, may petty cash sila. Tapos, every time na pag lumabas yung isang empleyado, more than 3 hours or 4 hours, entitled sila sa meals. Diba? Basta more than 4 hours or more than 3 hours ka sa labas ng office premise, entitled ka to meals. Kailangan mo kumain sa labas, i-reimburse mo na lang through petty cash. And then doon namin napansin na yung messenger is kumukuha siya ng resibo, pupunta siya ng Jollibee o kaya McDo, hindi naman talaga siya kakain. Kukuha siya ng resibo na nandoon, habang nasa table. Tapos, kukunin niya, ibibigay niya sa petty cashier. Yun yung ipang-reimburse niya. Kahit hindi naman talaga siya kumain. So, meron ba kayong idea paano namin nalaman na hindi talaga niya yun kinain? Do you have any idea? Siyempre, bilang isang auditor, kailangan skeptic kayo. Professionally skeptic, mag-isip. Paano namin nalaman? Date and time ng receipt. Yes, pwede. Tama po yan. Time ng receipt. Pwedeng ang nakuha niyang resibo pang yesterday, pero umalis siya lang today, di ba? Tapos ni-reimburse niya, nakita namin, ay, kahapon pa tong resibo na to, di ba? Yes, yung ibang company. Actually, yung ibang company, nagre-record sila ng pictures or proof nung kinainan niya. Yes, that's correct. Pwede naman, na-imagine ko na kumakain siya, tapos nagpipicture siya. Pero, parang hindi naman masyado, hindi naman masyadong practical na yun. Pero, yung ibang company, nare-require yung pictures or proof ng kinain. Tapos i-attach doon sa or kaya isa-send na lang sa Viber na ito yung kinain niya, gano'n. Yung iba, yung sa amin, sa case naman namin, nalaman namin na hindi sa kanya yon kasi bata pa siya, 30 plus years or going 40. Pero yung binigay niya sa aming resibo, merong merong senior citizens discount. So, syempre, nagulat kami, bakit may senior citizens discount ito? Eh, hindi ka naman senior citizen. So, doon namin nalaman na hindi pala niya yon kinain. So, syempre, hindi namin binigay. Hindi nag-prosper yung claim niya. Kasi binibigyan na namin siya ng incentives para kumain. Kasi more than 3 hours na siya or more than 4 hours na siya sa labas ng company. So, binigyan na namin na siya ng incentive para kumain. Pero hindi siya kumain kasi gusto niya gawing pera yung dapat kainin niya. Diba? So, ang incentive na yon is food, not money. So, yun yung mga example. Last one for risk assessment, identify and analyze significant change. Siyempre, we identify the risks. We analyze the risk. Was it pervasive? Was it negligible? Kung pervasive yung risk na yon, we have to set controls. Kung may naset ba tayong controls for those risks, meron bang change na mangyayari? Na-control ba, na-prevent ba yung risk na yon? Nakuha po ba? So yung risk kasi natin, from the, anong tawag dito, yung pahapyaw na view, pinaka-view lang ng risk. Meron kasi tayong tinatawag na inherent risk. Ito yung risk na hindi mo kayang kontrolin, hindi mo kayang pigilan, kasi nandun na yun, nag-i-exist na talaga yung risk na yon. Kahit anong mangyari, nandun na yun. Diba? Ano yung example ng inherent risk? Ito yung mga risk na like yung pandemic, di ba? Yung pandemic, it is a risk na hindi natin kayang kontrolin. Inherent risk na to kasi minsan natutulog lang siya. Nandyan talaga yung risk na yan, hindi lang siya magmamanifest this year or the following years, pero dadating yung time na lalabas yung risk na yon. So those are inherent risks. So example noon, yung pandemic. So the pandemic risk is an inherent risk. So yung mga risk naman na kaya natin kontrolin, ito yung tinatawag nating control risk. So yung control risk, ito yung mga risk na pwede nating pigilan by implementing internal controls. Diba? So bilang auditor, nag-implement tayo ng internal control procedures, internal control policies. Ang kaya lang natin ang kaya lang natin kontrolin ay control risk. Control risks. While yung inherent risks, hindi natin sila kayang kontrolin, hindi natin sila kayang pigilan, nandun lang yun. Pero, inaabangan natin kung kailan sila magmamanifest, kung kailan sila lalabas. Like for example, yun nga, yung pandemic. Alam natin, magkakaroon ng pandemic in the future, pero hindi natin alam kung kailan. Tapos nagulat na lang tayo, ay mayroon ng pandemic. And then affected lahat ng businesses, almost all. Imaginein mo, I'm not really sure kung aware kayo, yung degree nung damage sa buong Philippines or buong mundo about the pandemic. Like for example, sa tourism industry natin, yung tourism industry natin covers travel as well. So, imagine niyo yung mga airlines. Almost 50%, 70% nung mga flight stewardess, flight steward, pilots, tinanggal, di ba? Niretrench. Kasi hindi kakayanin ng airline na tuloy-tuloy yung bayad sa kanila, wala naman trabaho. So, kailangan, para makasurvive pa rin yung company, kailangan mag-cost cut, aalisin yung mga tao. So, Yan yung result no pandemic, which is an inherent risk. Hindi lang sa tourism, hindi lang sa travel industry ito. Saan pa? Sa yung mga no work, no pay, di ba? Yung mga nasa factory. Siyempre, yung mga non-essential workers na nagtatrabaho sa factory. Siyempre, yung mga hindi pagkain, mga uh, electronics na factory. Siyempre, hindi naman essential yon, pinastop magtrabaho dahil pandemic nga para ma-prevent yung pagkalat ng virus. Ano nangyari sa kanila? Dahil no work, no pay, wala silang bayad. Diba? Kung kailan lang mag-resume yung business, saka lang sila papapasukin. So, grabe yung effect sa atin. Diba? And we have, kung maalala nyo sa economics, we have the vicious cycle of poverty. Diba? Para ma-prevent yung vicious cycle of poverty, kailangan umangat yung isa sa cycle na yon. Diba? Kapag sinabing low income, pag low income daw, low investment. Diba? Pag low investment, low employment opportunity. Diba? Siyempre, pag low employment opportunity, low productivity. Pag low productivity, low income. Diba? At para ma-prevent yung vicious cycle of poverty na yun, kailangan umangat yung isa. Siyempre, kapag high yung income, tataas din yung employment opportunity. Ganon, di ba? High income, high productivity. Pag high productivity, high employment opportunity. Siyempre, high employment opportunity, high revenue. High revenue, higher income. So, yun yun. Pero dahil sa pandemic, maraming nawalan ng income. At dahil kapag nawalan ng income, change yung effect. Di ba? Low productivity, low employment, low income ulit. So, one example nga is the pandemic, which is inherent risk sa atin. So let's go now with the third component ng internal control, which is the control activities. So sa control activities, we have to select and develop control activities. So, bakit natin kailangang i-develop or i-select yung control activities? The purpose is to mitigate the risk. So, we are mitigating the risk. That's why we are setting control activities. So, sa control activities, anong meron sa control activities? These are actually control activities or controls. These are actions established through the policies and procedures that mitigate the likelihood or impact of risk. So, syempre, kapag may control activities na prevent, napapahina, nababawasan yung risk na dapat nag-i-exist, dapat nandoon sa control environment, di ba? But because of the control activities being performed at all levels of the organization, nawawala or nape-prevent, nababawasan yung risks, di ba? Controls can be manual. It can be automatic, di ba? Kapag manual control, syempre may human intervention, di ba? Like for example, yung kanina sa nabanggit natin, sa payroll, kapag nag-claim ng overtime, syempre kailangan approve muna nung immediate supervisor yung overtime. And then bago ma-claim, kailangan mag-file ng overtime form. Isa-submit sa payroll team o kaya sa HR department. Kapag wala ka na-submit, wala kang overtime pay. So those are manual controls. Ano naman yung mga technical controls or automotive controls? Automated controls, I'm so sorry. Ano yun? So these are controls performed by computer or electronic systems. Diba? Ano yung mga example nun? Meron ba kayo idea about sa automatic or electronic system? Dati kasi bandy clock lang tayo. Si RTU dati bandy clock lang sila. Kapag magta-time in yung mga teachers, meron silang time card, ilalagay lang sa bandy clock, ipapunch. Magpapunch yung bandy clock kung anong oras siya nag-time in. Kapag magta-time out siya, ilalagay ulit nila yung card nila, time card nila, tapos magpa-punch out naman si bandy clock. Ngayon, automated na. So, may, ang tawag dito, yung biometrics. May biometrics na ginagamit yung mga teachers, mga professors, lahat ng employees sa RTU. Diba? Pag nag-time in, pipindutin, ilalagay lang nila yung fingerprint nila, may re-register na, malalaman na, si ano pala to, si employee A pala to. Ito, si employee B, nag-time in, nag-time out. So, through automation nung time in and time out ng mga employees ng RTU, mas mabilis yung time in and time out. Dati kasi kapag bandy clock, mabagal. Siyempre, i-insert pa yung time card. So, nakaka-consume, humahaba yung pila. Pero ngayon, dahil fingerprint na lang, okay na. Meron pa nga ibang company like sa US, iris scanner lang yung ginagamit. Diba? O kaya facial recognition. Pagpasok mo, tatapat ka lang sa isang scanner, ma-recognize na yung face mo, ikaw yun. So, nag-time in ka. And then sa ibang school pa nga ginagamit yung ID na. I'm not sure sa RTU kung ID na yung ginagamit, nagta-tap in, tap out. Are we using it sa RTU, yung tap in, tap out system for IDs? Or hindi pa?
Ginagamit.
Di pa po, sir. Di pa, yata.
Hindi,
Pagpapasok
hindi pa.
lang ata.
Or gumagamit? Or yung ID,
Pagpapasok lang po
pagpapasok
ata.
nagta-tap in kayo.
Opo.
Pero pag lumabas, hindi na. Okay. So at least, paalis na sa pagiging dinosaur period yung RTU. Dati kasi walang ganun So at least ngayon, nag-evolve na si RTU na nagiging techy na rin si RTU. At least tap in lang, di ba? Tap out. Kasi kanya-kanya na. So, sa ibang school naman, kapag nag-tap in, may magte-text sa magulang na your son, ganito, your son is...
Yes. Kaya bawal mag-cutting.
Gano'n, di ba? Gano'n din ba sa RTU?
Hindi po.
Ay, hindi.
Wala po.
Okay. So, sa ibang school gano'n, kapag nag-tap out na, malalaman ng parents mo na ay, umalis na pala yung anak ko sa school, di ba? Minsan, syempre, ayun nga, pag nag-cutting class, di ba? Halimbawa, yung anak mo pumasok, ang oras is 7:30. O nakita ng parent mo, nag-text sa kanya yung school na pumasok nga. Tapos wala pa, dapat ang out niya is 4 o'clock p.m. Nakita na nag-text yung school sa magulang, nag-out ng 12 o'clock. Tapos hindi na ulit nag-tap in. Diba? Siyempre mag-aalala yung magulang nung estudyante. Sabihin niya, bakit wala ka na naman sa school? Saan ka na naman pumunta? Diba? So, merong control. Malalaman. Yung iba pa nga, may ibang school pa na yung grades ng anak, pinapadala naman sa magulang. At the end of the semester, papadalhan through email yung grade ng anak. Yung grades ng anak. So, syempre, minsan, di ba, pinapakita nung estudyante sa kanyang magulang yung grades niya. Ay, pa, ito yung grades ko, matataas. Pero, syempre, makikita, marireceive rin ng magulang niya, parang hindi naman totoo yan. Ito yung na-receive ko na grades mo. Akala mo lang, akala lang ng student, yun lang yung grade slip. Binibigyan din pala ng copy yung parents, di ba? Meron pa sa ibang school, kapag gumagawa ng thesis, o kaya ng feasibility studies, meron silang checker ng plagiarism checker. Parang yung soft copy nung gagawin mong thesis, ipapasok yun sa system nila. Matitrace kung saan nanggaling yung mga information na nilagay mo sa thesis mo. Tapos kapag majority of it similar doon sa sa isang libro, hindi nila tatanggapin yon, it will be considered as a plagiarism. So babaguhin mo talaga yon. So maganda for me, maganda rin yung ganun kasi mapipilitan talaga yung mga estudyante na gumawa ng sariling thesis, mag-effort talaga, hindi yung copy paste lang, 'di ba? So tas hindi pa magsa-cite nung pinanggalingan. So those are the following control activities na pwedeng i-implement in a control environment, 'di ba? So second one, select and develop information technology general computer controls, 'di ba? ITGCCs or general computer controls. Dati kasi syempre manual lang. Ngayon, computer integrated na, computer generated na yung systems, 'di ba? Mayroon ng intervention ng computers. So, syempre kailangan din natin gumawa ng internal control procedures pagdating sa mga computer automated controls. Diba? Malay ba natin kung baka may system glitch, 'di ba? Naalala niyo ba yung sa BPI, nagkaroon ng system glitch dati sa BPI way back 2018. Yes, 2018. And nung time na yon, kasi I have my BPI account din, nakita ko na nagkaroon ng system glitch, nabawasan yung pera ko. Ang lumabas na nga lang doon sa pera ko, negative 20,000 nung time na yon. Tapos meron naman yung pinapakita naman sa television or sa Facebook, nagkaroon naman sila ng 15 million sa account nila, 100,000. So nagkaroon ng system glitch doon sa BPI online, BPI Express online application. So, anong ginawa ni BPI? So, yung preventive control measure nila is to freeze all the BPI accounts. Bawal mag-withdraw within this matter of days. Kasi ayusin pa namin yung system. Kasi kapag nakita mo meron kang 15 million sa account mo, hindi naman sa iyo, anong gagawin mo kaya? Doon lang tayo sa totoo. Mag-withdraw ka ba o hindi? Kasi for me, for example, kung may ganun ako nakita sa akin, and then hindi ko alam kung saan nanggaling, mag-withdraw ako, kukuha ako, 'di ba? Unless na lang may mag-claim, 'di ba? Parang finders keepers. Pero syempre, that's the reality. Anong tawag dito? Ma-attract ka doon sa pera na nasa laman ng account mo, 'di ba? So, preventive measure nung BPI is to freeze all their accounts. Bawal mag-withdraw. So, kailangan, para ma-prevent naman yung system glitch na yan in the future, kailangan merong controls, internal control pagdating sa IT, general computer controls. Sino yung dapat lang mag-check, sino yung dapat mag-maintain nung computer system, kasi bawal pagsamahin yung nagme-maintain ng computer system, yung sa maintenance, bawal din yung siya rin yung nag-ooperate, 'di ba? Dapat iba yung nag-ooperate, iba din yung sa system maintenance, 'di ba? Kasi malay ba natin, kung siya yung nag-ooperate, siya din yung sa systems maintenance, maglagay siya doon ng bots, ng robots, 'di ba, sa system na pwedeng makapang-hack. E di kapag nag-operate na siya, pwede na siya mamili ng mga bank accounts, kukuhanan niya kahit pa piso-piso lang yan. Ilan ba yung users or ilan ba yung account holders na may BPI? Sabihin natin 1,000,000, kahit pa piso-piso lang yung kuhanan nila bawat isa, may 1,000,000 na siya. 'Di ba? What more pa kaya kung more than 1 million ang merong BPI? Ilan tayo sa Pilipinas? 107 million? O sabihin natin, mga 30 million, 40 million, may BPI accounts. Bawasan mo piso-piso pa isa-isa, may 40 million ka na. In just a snap of your hand, kung ikaw yung may hawak ng maintenance saka operations nung BPI account, BPI online. Diba? Siyempre. Kaya kailangan, dapat magkahiwalay din yun. So, those are the controls that we need to consider pagdating sa control activities, pagdating sa computer generated or general computer controls. Diba? Mobilize through policies and procedures. Itong mga control activities na to, kailangan naka-adhere siya with the existing policies and procedures ng internal control. Fourth one, information and communication. So, we have to use relevant information. Kailangan, relevant lang yung information natin. So, we have to obtain information to support internal control. Yun yung sinasabi nun. Bakit? Why do we need relevant information to support internal control? Do you have any idea? Do you have any idea? Ano yung mga information that will support controls in the information and communication? In the first place, why do we need information, diba? For the whole organization. Because information constitutes the data that will be used during internal controls, diba? Internal control policies, kailangan may proper information kasi it will support to achieve objectives. And proper information is necessary for the organization to perform internal control activities. Diba? Ano ba yung mga, saka syempre, iba-iba yung information na kailangan nating ibigay or i-instruct. Depende sa kung ano yung level ng organization, ano yung level structure ng organization. So, paiba-iba yun. Diba? That's why information is really necessary and it must be relevant. So, we have information. Another one, we have communication. So, syempre, meron tayong information. It contains the data necessary to perform internal control. Kailangan, alam natin kung paano i-communicate yung information na yon. Nagigets po ba? So, yung communication, so depende yon kung ano yung klase ng communication, way ng communication natin. Pwede yung communication is interpersonal or face-to-face communication. Kasi hindi naman lahat may access to mobile internet, to emails, di ba? So, yung pag-relay, pagbigay ng information is through face-to-face, di ba? Meron namang group-level communication. So, the communication or dissemination of information is among teams or within the teams, units, or groups. So, yun yung group-level communication. And then, meron naman tayong communication na organizational level naman. So, ang dissemination ng information is through the whole organization. So, we need to consider information and communication as one of the components of internal control kasi kailangan natin i-provide yung relevant information lang. Hindi na natin kailangan i-provide yung ibang information na hindi naman relevant pagdating doon sa implementation ng particular internal control. Then we have to communicate internally. Siyempre, communicating internally within the organization and then communicating externally for third parties. Diba? So, iba yung communication na binibigay natin kapag internal communication lang, iba na rin yung communication kapag external communication or communicating with third parties. Last one is monitoring activities. So sa monitoring activities, after considering the first four components of the internal control, yung monitoring activities naman, ito na yung end phase nung internal control procedure. Siyempre, we have to conduct ongoing or separate evaluations. Tama ba yung internal control procedure na nilagay natin doon sa particular unit, particular process? And then, kapag we have to evaluate and communicate deficiencies. Kung may nakita tayong deficiencies, inaccuracies, or for further improvement, kailangan i-monitor natin yon. So, may monitoring tayo. First monitoring, nakita natin yung deficiency. Second monitoring, may improvement ba doon sa deficiency o lumala pa ba yung deficiency? Third, okay na ba? Fourth, monitoring, consistent ba yung application, kung perfect na or okay na ba yung internal control. So, ito yung 5 components that we have to consider under internal control in order to achieve the operating objectives, reporting objectives, and compliance objectives no company. So, last one is the levels. So, dun sa right side ng cube, we have different levels kung saan applicable yung internal control framework. So, meron tayong tinatawag na function-wide control. So, pag function-wide control, ito lang yung per individual function, di ba? Ano yung function ni accountant, di ba? Are there any controls that we can implement kay accountant, di ba? Si accountant, siya yung nagre-record ng transactions, di ba? Pag siya yung nagre-record ng transactions, pwede ba natin siya pahawakin ng pera, di ba? Kung malaki yung company, dapat ba, necessary ba na si accountant yung humawak ng pera? So, syempre, tayo bilang internal auditor ay hindi dapat humawak ng pera si accountant kasi si accountant yung nagre-record, kung hawak niya yung pera, pwede niyang i-modify yung record, yung kinuha niyang pera, i-expense na lang niya, di ba? Para mabawasan yung pera doon, di ba? Halimbawa, hawak niya rin yung petty cash, di ba? Kapag hawak niya yung petty cash, tapos kumuha siya ng 100 pesos, ang gagawin niya lang doon, lalagyan niya lang ng i-record niya sa accounting journal entries niya, debit expense, credit cash, di ba? Or debit miscellaneous expense, credit cash. Ibig sabihin, may lumabas na pera sa petty cash, o pwede niya siya magpa-replenish ulit. Diba? So, we are implementing internal controls based on different levels within the entity. So, una yung function-wide, ikalawa, operation-wide controls. What are those controls applicable within the operation? Siyempre, group of persons na to working for a particular unit or or department. So, yun yung operation-wide. And then, division-wide naman, ito yung group of different departments working the same, considered as one division. So, let's say, for example, balik tayo sa mga malalaking companies like Procter & Gamble naman. Si Procter & Gamble, so meron silang beauty care division, di ba? Sa beauty care division, may kanya-kanya silang operations ng, halimbawa, yung sa shampoo, di ba? Head and shoulder operations, factory operations. And then they have, ano pa ba mga example ng Procter & Gamble products? They have Safeguard, di ba? Safeguard factories. Safeguard factory operation. Ayun pa. Tide, di ba? So, Tide, yes, tama. Si Tide ay Procter & Gamble. Okay, so yun, di ba? They have different products, pero meron sila ring division na mako-consider similar products for particular use, di ba? Like beauty care, sanitary care, house cleaning, kung saan kasama si Tide, di ba? So yun yung mga divisions. So what are those controls applicable para naman sa division-wide controls? And then for the overall entity, these are the entity-wide controls, di ba? And then we are also considering doon sa levels, ano ba yung general relationship ng employees sa kanong organization. Siyempre, kailangan nating tignan kung ano yung relationship ng employee sa kanong overall organization. Baka pangit yung relationship ng management sa kanong employees, di ba? Kasi kapag nalaman natin na hindi maganda yung relationship ng employees sa kanong management, baka in the future magkaroon ng strike. Di ba? Hindi na magtrabaho yung mga tao, magwelga na lang sa harap ng factory. And then system of authority defining superiors and subordinates. So we also need to consider those authorities delegated to superiors and subordinates. Baka kasi merong authority na pang superior lang, pang manager, pero naibibigay na i-delegate sa subordinates, di ba? Pwedeng magkaroon ng abuse of power, tingnan. And then last one, general views of employees about the organization's destiny, purpose, and goals, and their place in it. Siyempre, kaya yung HR, nagkakandak sila ng survey, ano ba yung nasa isip ng employee with 5 years from now, nasa isip na employee, kino-consider pa ba nila na nag-work sila sa company? Diba? Ano ba yung naisip nila na purpose and goals ng company para sa mga employee? So, ganun yan. By conducting that survey, makikita natin kung ano yung naisip ng mga employees pagdating sa organization. So, these are the things we need to consider on the levels na nakaka-affect. I mean, kasama doon sa implementation ng internal controls based sa COSO framework. Other internal control frameworks. So we're now done with the COSO framework. Are there any questions pagdating sa COSO framework? Do you have any questions? I think none
None,
so
sir.
far from your end. None so far. Okay. So, last na lang ito. Other control frameworks. We have the COCO framework. Yung COCO framework naman, similar lang siya with the COSO framework. So, COCO means Criteria of Control Framework. This was prepared by the Canadian Institute of Chartered Accountants, kung saan pareho lang rin sila with the COSO framework. Kaso, ang difference lang ni COCO framework kay COSO frameworks that COCO framework is focused more on the behavioral approach pagdating sa internal control rather than methodological approach pagdating sa internal control. Then we have COBIT framework. Yung COBIT framework naman is more on computer controlled internal controls. So COBIT means Control Objectives for Information and Related Technology. So this was established by the Institute of Systems Audit na about sa internal control regarding sa mga computer-generated internal controls. And then last one, ISO framework. So yung ISO framework naman, ito yung pinaka-latest ngayon kung saan most of the companies would like to follow. Gusto nilang maging certified sila. Kasi pag ISO certified ka, ibig sabihin maganda yung internal control mo. So, like for example, si RTU, ISO certified si RTU. Pero ISO 9000, ibig sabihin, pag ISO 9000, sorry. ISO 9000 is more on implementation of internal control pagdating sa documentation, 'di ba? So ISO kasi is very broad. Hindi lang siya nakafocus sa internal control ng process ng documentation, on which si RTU ISO 9000 certified siya. So documentation. So lahat ng documentation ni RTU may ano yan, processes yan. Merong internal control procedures na ini-implement dyan. So kung mapapansin nyo, dati kasi ang pangit nung mga forms ni RTU. Parang dati nga photocopy lang yun eh. Hanggang sa tumagal, ang pangit na ng itsura kasi kaka-photocopy. Pero ngayon, nasa website na yung mga forms kasi yun yung requirement ni ISO. Meron namang ibang ISO standard certifications like ISO 14,000 naman. Ito naman yung related sa environmental concern. So lahat ng mga nasa mining companies, kapag gusto nila magpa-certify sa ISO, kailangan sila maging compliant with ISO 14,000, which is the environmental internal control procedures. So, ganun. And then, yung iba naman yung sa mga food and pharmaceutical companies. Ibang ISO standard certification naman regarding naman yung sa good manufacturing practice. So, ganun. So, iba-iba yung ISO certifications, pero ISO ang nagbibigay. So, ayun yung latest. So, are there any questions pagdating sa control frameworks? Do you have any questions regarding control frameworks? None. Okay, so none so far. And next week, we will be having a prelim, pero yung prelim natin will just be a situational case and essay. So, ipopost ko yung ano natin, ipopost ko yung prelim nyo dun sa group natin kasi standard lang naman yon from my end. So, lahat kayo, and then you can write your explanation, your opinion, your approach, applying the chapters 1 to 5 based on the situation or based on the questions provided. So, hindi nyo kailangan mag-memorize. Ang gusto ko lang malaman is gaano kalalim yung natutunan nyo for those chapters na pinag-aralan natin. And kailan kayo walang pasok? Meron ba kayong araw na walang pasok?
Opo, sir.
Meron po, sir.
Tuesday and Thursday.
Anong araw po kaya yan? Tuwing?
Tuesday and Thursday.
Thursday po.
Tuesday and Thursday. Okay. So, ang gusto ko, pwede bang Thursday ang prelim ninyo? Thursday. Thursday, tapos ang submission, okay lang sa akin. Thursday and then submission will be on Saturday. Kasi Saturday, may meeting ulit tayo. So, magdi-discuss naman tayo ng ibang chapters na.
Okay po, sir.
Okay. So, by Thursday, ipopost ko po yung prelim ninyo sa group natin. Then, I will provide a link kung saan i-upload nyo yung answers nyo. So, similar nung na may assignment kayo. So, ganun lang. And then, next Saturday, we'll be having a meeting for Chapter 6 and so on. So, check natin. Para matapos natin yung buong operations auditing. And then, within this week, this coming week, magpo-post ulit ako ng mga quizzes, short quizzes for those chapters na natakal natin. So, short quizzes lang yun. Like yung chapter 1, di ba, nakapag-post na ako and then nag-answer na kayo. okay lang yon. So, tama po yon. So, sagot lang kayo ng sagot kasi may result na rin yun, automatically computed. Then, if you want to retake the quiz, okay lang naman para ma-assess nyo kung tama yung ginawa nyo. I mean, tama yung sagot nyo. And then, in the near future, ganito lang, ang advice ko, in the near future or in the following months, balikan nyo ulit yung quiz nyo na yon, try nyo ulit sagutan. Kung makukuha nyo pa rin yung same result na nakuha nyo before. So wala namang restriction sa pagsagot nung quizzes. Kung gusto nyo i-retake, so hindi natin to aalisin yung group na to. So kung gusto nyo balikan, pwede nyo ulit ma-retrieve yung mga quizzes nyo. Pwede nyo ulit sagutan. So okay yun. Mas okay. So any questions? Sir, pwede po ba makahingi ng PowerPoint nyo mula chapter 1? Wait lang, let me just check. Sir, pwede po ba makahingi ng PowerPoint nyo simula chapter 1 to 5? Yes, pwede ko po. Pwede ko pong ibigay. I-send ko na lang ulit dun sa group. And then, at the same time, na yung discussion naman natin is naka-post din, di ba? Naka-post din doon. So, pwede nyo rin balikan yung I think sa YouTube yata naka-post yun. Pwede nyo balikan yung discussion natin last time. Tapos, pwede nyo rin tignan yung PowerPoint. I-upload ko yung PowerPoint natin sa group natin. And then, sir, na-upload na po ba sa group yung lectures and presentations last Saturday? Last Saturday, I don't think we have class last Saturday kasi, di ba, University Week? Sir, may deadline po ba yung pag-comment ng mga video? Wala pong deadline yung pag-comment ng mga video, but I encourage you to give your insights, post comments on the videos. Kasi may grade po yun. Di ba meron po ako doon pinost sa group natin sa amendments sa grading system. So one point system is yung active participation nyo sa asynchronous discussion natin. I mean, last meetings po. Sa last meeting, let me check kung na-upload ko. Pero ang alam ko kasi, na-upload ko na yun sa YouTube. But let me check again. So, are there any other questions? Are there any other questions? I think none so far, no? Okay, but this one is also recorded. This meeting is also recorded. So I will also upload this lecture discussion sa YouTube, and then I'll send you the link. Kasi di ba nag-conduct ako ng survey last time, and you said mas okay sa YouTube. And then, so, susundin ko yung gusto nyo sa YouTube, but I'll post also the link dun sa group page natin for you to check as well. So if wala na kayong question, maybe we can end this meeting, and thank you so much, class, for participating on our Google meeting. Everything is recorded here, so makikita ko kung sino yung mga umattend, and di ba may points rin naman yung pag-attend dito, although not that big kasi not all of us can afford to join synchronous meeting. And thank you so much again. See you next Saturday, and good luck on your prelims this week, including ours. And happy lunch within 30 minutes. Thank you so much, class. Bye-bye.
Thank you po.
Thank you po.
Thank you po.
sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you po.